DIY or die. Shocking survival tricks from the Great Depression. When the Great Depression hit America in the late 1920s and 1930s, overnight prosperity turned to desperation. Millions of people lost their jobs, and the unemployment rate soared to an almost unimaginable 25%. The economy laid in tatters, but it slowly became part of daily life. This new daily life demanded a level of relentless creativity that was not thought of by the earlier generation. Even the simplest of things like keeping a roof overhead and bringing food to the table became full-time struggles. In this tough time, inventiveness became the primary tool for survival. The boundaries between daily routine and DIY innovation were blurred as Americans realized that the only way to get through these hardships was through being resourceful and creative in their methods. In this video, we will explore exactly what those methods were and why they would look so shocking today. Innovation and survival. The economic disaster did more than just take people's money. It forced the whole country to get creative just to survive. Families had no choice. Jobs were almost impossible to find, banks were failing everywhere, and often the only help was from kind neighbors. In this tough time, Americans used determination and imagination. People who had never made or fixed things began quickly learning how to rely on themselves. Being creative became necessary every day. To survive, everyone had to learn new skills they thought they would never need.
The Great Depression was a time of immense hardship and resourcefulness, where individuals had to rely on their skills and ingenuity to survive.
This wave of change swept across cities and farms, turning them into places where people invented new ways to get by. Shocking survival statistics. But before we begin exploring further, let's see how bad the actual situation was during the 1930s. Life was financially very tough for most families in America. On average, white, male-led families earned about $1,400 a year, while black families made just $600 to $700, sometimes less than $50 a month. The Great Depression hit hard, with unemployment jumping from 3.2% in 1929 to nearly 25% by 1933, meaning 1 out of every 4 people was out of work. The banking system also collapsed.
In the many years since the extraordinary bank runs of the Great Depression,
with the number of failing banks rising from 659 in 1929 to over 5,000 just 4 years later. Food preservation. The first thing to get affected was food, obviously. With store shelves empty or food prices too high, families had to come up with new ways to feed themselves. Home canning became common everywhere. People crowded kitchens, boiling jars and sealing up beans, peaches, corn, and tomatoes so they'd have food during the winter. Pressure cookers were always hissing on the stove. Saving seeds turned into an important habit too. Gardeners carefully dried and stored seeds from their best plants. This way they could grow food again each spring, even when there was little to work with. Looking for wild food became a family outing. Parents and kids wandered fields and roadside ditches picking dandelion greens, wild berries, nuts, and onions for meals. These wild foods brought in vitamins and calories that everyone needed. Front lawns slowly disappeared under new rows of beans, corn, and squash. Backyards became gardens, packed with vegetables to make sure families had enough homegrown food to last them. The trickiest part of all was preserving meat because many people simply didn't have fridges that worked well.
Preserving meat long-term without a fridge sounds impossible, but for the Amish, it's part of their daily life.
This challenge made families return to old ways and get creative with new ones. Some built homemade smokehouses to smoke pork. Others salted or soaked meat in brine, or dried it into jerky so it wouldn't spoil. People used every part of what they had. Bones went into big pots to make soup broth. Animal fat was saved for cooking or turned into bars of soap. Almost nothing got thrown away. Families found a use for everything.
Preservation method. The Amish have mastered this technique, using smoke to further dehydrate their meats.
Clothing survival. After food, the next most important thing was clothing. Buying fabric at the store was too expensive for most people, and new clothes were almost impossible to get. So, families got creative with fabric recycling. Feed sacks, which were once just trash, became the main source of new fabric. Companies started printing these sacks with bright, fun patterns so people could turn them into dresses, shirts, underwear, and aprons. Moms and older kids worked hard to sew and remake clothes from whatever they could find. Feed sack fashion actually became a trend during the Great Depression. Old clothes weren't thrown away. Instead, they were cut up, resized, and handed down from one sibling to another, patched and fixed again and again. Socks, pants, and sweaters got darned and repaired instead of being tossed out. When shoes wore out, people put pieces of cardboard inside for extra padding, or tried to resole or repatch them. Shoes were also passed down as kids grew. Nothing went to waste. A long dress that had become too worn could be turned into an apron or a child's shirt. People used every bit of fabric to ensure that nothing was wasted and every piece lasted as long as possible. Home repair innovations. Homes and everything inside them had to survive just like families did. People quickly got used to scavenging for building materials wherever they could. Families searched construction sites, alleys, and junkyards for scrap wood, broken bricks, bits of metal, and even old tools. In short, anything that could help fix the house or make it more comfortable. Leaky roofs were patched with mismatched boards, rusty nails, or even flattened tin cans. Drafty walls got stuffed with whatever people could find. Old blankets, torn clothing, newspapers, or straw. Literally anything to keep the heat in during cold winters. Windows that broke were sometimes covered with cardboard, oilcloth, or even plastic sheeting if someone was lucky enough to find it. Furniture was never wasted. If a table broke, the legs might get reused to build a stool or crib. An old chair could be taken apart and turned into shelves. Kids' beds were sometimes made out of old wooden crates. People learned how to repair nearly anything using homemade glue or nails pulled from other broken items. The idea was, fix it, don't toss it. Tea kettles with leaks were patched with metal pieces or sealed with homemade putty. Worn-out wagon wheels got reinforced with wire or strips of rubber. Even broken dishes found a new life. Some families glued them back together, while others used the pieces for mosaic decorations or even drain covers. Nothing was wasted, and every repair showed a little more creativity. Psychological survival skills. Surviving during the Great Depression was about a lot more than simply saving money or materials. It required a whole new mindset, a total change in the way people approached daily life. Nothing could be wasted, no matter how small or simple it seemed. Wasting food was unthinkable. Leftovers from dinner would make tomorrow's soup, stew, or broth, and if something couldn't be eaten by people, it became feed for animals or chickens. Even the tiniest things were kept, like buttons, pieces of scrap metal, paper, or bits of string, because there was always the chance they might come in handy. Drawers and jars were filled with odds and ends for repairs and emergencies. Creative problem solving became a regular part of daily life, as each new day seemed to bring some unexpected new challenges. If something broke or there wasn't enough of a certain material, people found a way to make do, to patch things up, or to invent a clever solution with what was available. People in neighborhoods and small towns leaned on each other for advice and help. It was common to see neighbors or whole communities gathering to trade tips about canning foods, fixing clothes, or building homemade tools. The knowledge shared between neighbors, or even people living on the same street, became just as valuable as any physical resource. Adaptability was one of the most important skills anyone could have during this time. Families got used to changing their plans quickly, learning new techniques, or finding creative substitutes whenever supplies ran out or situations changed suddenly. Old ways of doing things had to be rethought time and time again, and everyone had to be ready to try something new if it meant making life a little easier. Of course, as you can tell by now, it wasn't about physical survival. Psychological strength was just as important. People learned to keep going, even when things felt hopeless. They found ways to support each other, focusing on community, hope, and small victories. When you fix things, grow your own food, or save money today, you follow the example of those who faced hard times with determination and creativity. These practical lessons from the past remain valuable today. If stories of survival and clever ideas from the past inspire you, don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again with more interesting coverage of American history.